afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sang as springing one on me here. I didn't think I was going to be called upon to do anything except applaud. We are fortunate in having with us this afternoon a gentleman who until now had never been to our camp, I believe that's correct, who's a member of the First Presbyterian Church in New York City with me, and who happens to have a relationship with the word Scudder. It so happens that the Scudders were a missionary family, and they were missionaries in India, of which George is a native. I'll let him tell the story of the Scudders. But when Susan Olson and I happened to visit George in his office in New York City, he was drawn like a moth to the flame to that word Scudder. It turns out that the Scudders were not only helpful here at Holmes Camp, but were also instrumental in helping to spread Christianity and good health care in the country of India. So, George, would you please tell us a little about the Scudder connection?
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, all of you, for welcoming me here. So as Dave said, when Dave and Susan came to my office and was telling me about Holmes, I instantly saw the name Scudder and asked Susan, where is that name coming from? And Susan said, well, I don't know, but I'm going to do the research. And of course, she got right on it. And turned out it is the same family. Now, I don't think you've done DNA testing or anything like that, but there couldn't be more than one Scudder family that was missionaries in India. So, another one of those, I think as Sang said, the word family, we're all connected one way or the other, and I think that's another illustration of it. But let me tell you the story of Scudders. It's an exciting story. The story really is about Ida Scudder, who is the daughter and granddaughter of missionaries who spent their lives in India being missionaries. This is in the 1800s. As you know, around that time, there was a great movement in U.S. for people to go out to many countries. India was one of the more popular destinations for that. Ida Scudder was a daughter, and she wasn't really drawn that much to the missionary life. She said, I'm going to go back to U.S. and go to school here, and I'm going to see how things work out. So she was back here. Her parents were back in India being missionaries in South India. She graduated from college and heard that her mother is not doing well. She was not feeling well. And she had just graduated, so she said, I'm going to go take a trip to see if I can help the parents. So she went on a trip to India. And her parents were hoping that Ida would come to India and be turned on by the missionary work and would take on the family tradition of being missionaries. But during the stay, you can imagine this is now late 1800s in India, the heat and the humidity and the dust and what else. Ida kind of said, look, I don't think this is the life for me. I think I really want to go back to America and make my way there. Parents were understandably disappointed, but accepted. And the last night that she spent in India, the next day she was coming back to U.S., was a very eventful night. And that night changed her life course and made a big difference. So here's what happened. They were all sleeping at night, and there was a knock on the door, and Ida went and opened the door, and there was a man who was clearly in distress who said, look, my wife is in labor. She is in terrible pain. Can you please come and help me take care of her? Ida said, look, let me get the right person for that. Went and called her father, who was a doctor. And Ida said, here's my father. He's a doctor. He will take care of that. The man said, no, you don't understand. According to our traditions, only a woman can attend to my wife. No man can come near my wife. so you have to come. And Ida said, look, I'd like to help, but I'm just got out of college. I don't have any skills. I'll be useless. So I really cannot come. The man was clearly very disappointed, but left. They all went back to bed, and a little time later, knock on the door, and a second man comes with the same story. My wife is in great pain. Can you please come? Again, she tried to have her father. Man said no, and Ida said no, and the man went away. A little time later, a third man comes with the same story. And same story, didn't go. But the next morning, when they got up, they found out that all three women had died the night before. And Ida took this as a sign from God and said, you know, I'm going to change my mind. I am going to be a missionary, but I'm going to do it for health care for women in India. So she came back to U.S., and she graduated in 1899 in the first class from Cornell Medical School that admitted women. Became a doctor, and then also during that time, she was also a pretty good fundraiser, had raised some money from friends, went back to India, and opened up a small dispensary for women. She turned out to be a very enterprising person, and that little dispensary grew to be one of the largest healthcare facilities in India today. She opened up a medical college, medical school first for women, and then later they admitted men. The hospital, they also built a hospital by then, and by then they had started treating men also. Opened up a nursing school, opened up a school for allied health professionals, and opened up a facility to give rural health care, because many of the families don't come to a hospital in a place like India. You have to go out there to give health care. So that place today, it's called Vellore Christian Medical College and Hospital. It's one of the largest healthcare facilities in India, for that matter, in Asia. Some of the statistics about Vellore. Vellore has 2,632 beds, and they treat over 2 million outpatients every year, and it makes it the largest Christian hospital in the world. The hospital has retained a terrific ranking, always is ranked either number 1 or number 2 in India, has kept up with all the research. It's again, considered to be one of the top research places. Vellore was the first place in India to do a open heart surgery, first place to do a kidney transplant, first place to do a heart transplant, and on and on and on. From a technical and technological perspective, it's one of the best places in India to get health care. The medical school is always ranked either number 1 or number 2, and along with many other nursing school and many other places. But throughout all of this time, Vellore has also retained its Christian character. It openly says Vellore Christian Medical College and Hospital, and that's not a small feat in a country like India, which is 97% non-Christian. So, but that Christian character shows up in the mission orientation that the place has. So, for example, if you show up in Vellore today and you say, I have a problem and I have no money, they'll take you in and they'll give you the same care that they'll give to anybody else, free of charge. And the medical school, the number 1 and number 2 ranked medical school, the tuition is $200 a year. But the only thing they ask of the students is, when they graduate, they have to agree to spend 3 years in a mission hospital doing medical care. So they're willing to make that exchange, that we will give you a top medical care at pretty much free of cost, but you give back to the society. And how do they treat the people who have no money free of cost? Because of his technical ranking, very affluent people, when they need something, they come to Vellore. That's the best place to get medical care. And they charge full fare. And that subsidizes the rest of the care. The doctors and nurses and others who work there for 1/2 to 1/3 the market compensation. Many of these are the best cardiologists and best practitioners in their respective fields. They could go out of Vellore today and they could burn several times what they're making, but they stay there and they do it as a lifelong mission for the place. So what Ida created has become an incredible institution in India. Ida stayed on and we didn't have the title CEO, but effectively was the CEO until 1960 when she passed away. So that's the story of Vellore, and it's really an exciting story. I've often wondered, when I think about that story, I think about the young, single, good-looking woman, Ida Scudder, standing on the docks in 1899, waiting to board the ship to take her to India to start all this. And I've often wondered, what must have gone through her mind at that time. Because on the one hand, she was a doctor. There's a story in her life about some romantic interest. The details are not clear, but there was a person there on stage. She could have stayed here. She could have gotten married. She could have had kids. She could have been an important person in the society and led a life of comfort and maybe even luxury. And on the other side is this life of going back to India, of the land of heat and dust and humidity and all those things that she didn't like, but also much more importantly, for a single woman to accomplish some things in a very male-dominated society. Must have been very, very difficult at every step of the way. And that was the two choices in that inflection point in her life. And I've always wondered, what were the thoughts in her mind as she was waiting to board that ship? Because once you are on that, you're pretty much charting a particular path. Well, she boarded the ship, and she made that choice of being other-centered, of thinking about someone else's needs and putting the needs of others ahead of her own comfort and having a longer time horizon. In other words, choosing the long-term good for others as opposed to the shorter-term conveniences or pleasures of self. And I think that is the essence of being a good Presbyterian, a good Christian, and a good human being. And on this day that you're dedicating the Scudder building, that's my wish for all of us, that when we have those inflection points in our life, big or small, that we have the courage to choose like I did. Thank you very much.